Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to Tinsel Town tonight. This evening, I have a special guest. Her name is Anna Schlegel, and she's the author of a book called Truly Global. This is the book right here, and I'm going to invite her in. So thank you so much for coming to Tinsel Town Live with Miz Meliz. That's me, Melissa Reyes. Just a moment, and I'll bring her in. And there she is. Hi, Anna.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. You look fantastic.
Thank you.
We met briefly just a few moments ago, and through the power of the internet, we're live tonight with you, and I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to Tinsel Town Live with Miz Meliz. I'm so glad that we have this opportunity because even though I'm not really into marketing and business, I love to talk to people who have written books, who followed their passion, who've done good things for people. And you are a superstar in that way because after looking at your book, I realized how much you've done, and the reasons that you've done it are for other people to succeed in life and to be, to be better in everything that they do. So I'm anxious to hear about all about you. So why don't you tell me, introduce yourself, and I'll go and do the sharing out on Facebook.
Perfect. Yes, so my name is Anna Schlegel. I live in the Bay Area in California. I am a native of Spain. I am a senior director of engineering at a beautiful company called NetApp. NetApp is a giant company that does data management software and hardware.
Okay.
At NetApp, I have about 178 people. We are in charge of making sure that the company is strong globally in around 150 countries. And then we also manage the content strategy for the company.
Wow. How did you go into that field? What's your background? Where did you start out with business?
It's a long story.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer. I am not an engineer, but I'm a senior director of engineers. I actually studied linguistics and speech and languages, and I have a few degrees in German and English from a few universities. And right after university, I started as a translator. So I used to have a translating company, translating agency.
Wow.
And, I had a company by the name of Cisco Networking, Cisco Systems hired me in the 90s to start their localization team, their team that would see Cisco go global. This is about 20 years ago when companies were still very, very new on how do you cross borders, and Cisco is a giant today here in the Silicon Valley. And so I was one of the first pioneers in several companies on how do we take our products into international markets. And I was very young when I started doing this. I had no clue, but little by little I learned, and going into different companies I learned, working with different professionals, we learned together. And so that's one thing led to another. I started as a translator and became a project manager, then a program manager, then the group manager, then a senior manager, director, senior director.
You climbed up that ladder.
I worked it. It took me 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And so what is your main purpose for writing this book at this time? What motivated you?
Yeah, so and it's very funny because a year ago when I started writing the book, I could not envision what's happening in the last couple of weeks. When I started writing the book,
understatement, right?
I wanted to show what folks in in companies that are very strong globally, how do they make that happen? How do you take a company outside of your country and how do you expand across borders?
Mm-hmm.
There's many companies that do this really well. The teams behind them are very strong teams. However, I couldn't find a book that explained what does it take and who are the people behind these giants of making them go global. I couldn't find a book, so I decided to write it.
And, it's what I love about when I first read the concept and found out about it, I thought, oh boy, this might be more than I can understand because it's just so bigger than my little life here in, San Fernando Valley. And even though I'm online and I speak with people from around the world, this is big business. And then I thought, well, I can read and I can figure it out. So I have a little bit of a background in marketing and business from college. And so I took a look at it and I love it. I love it because it's simple in that it's not very long and it's not very deep, but it's very full of information that makes sense if you've worked in a corporate setting particularly, which I have. But I think it really lends itself to understanding globalization as far as a culturalization of learning to deal with people. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because of the book, I am doing a lot of interviews and I'm being asked to write a lot of articles. And you seem to understand why I wrote this book. There's a lot of people that are asking me if I agree if Trump should, sponsor a border, with Mexico. The reason why I wrote this book is because there's thousands and thousands and thousands of employees around the world here in the States that work in corporate settings that have the title global. They have global programs, so they are being asked to think globally or to add a different country for their product. And if you're not in my profession, I don't know how these folks are learning how to do this. And going global does not mean that you're going to translate papers or that you're going to translate a white paper on something. It really means that you need to learn how to work with your counterparts in other parts of the world. How is your product going to stay in another country? It takes a lot of different things. It's just not about translations. It's just not about, putting a pretty package. And as you said, it's big business, right? The companies that I work for or that I have worked for are multi-billion-dollar giants,
right?
Selling very sophisticated, in IP to other countries. And so it needs to be very well orchestrated. I also try to encourage people that have smaller businesses or startups on what are some of the things that they can do. A lot of people ask me like, well, what if I just have a shop online?
Right.
I bet, whatever it is that you,
And sure, it still applies, right? Because your basically
applies.
Yeah.
There's money to be made. And I think you just need to plan it out and try it. And by doing so, I think people learn also a lot. Like even if you're trying to sell your jewelry into another country, or if you're trying to sell your arts and crafts into another country, you're going to have to think of, well, what if they don't like it and they need to return it?
Yeah.
How am I going to write the instructions so that other people in other parts of the world are going to understand how the jewelry is going to be put together or whatever. So you need to think through all the little steps of what any of your customers need to do with your product. Your customers need to research it, buy it, return it, upgrade it, resell it, whatever it is that they need to do. You have to enable them to to do that in as many languages as you're going. Let's say you want to sell your stuff in Japan.
Right.
Then you're going to have to translate your website into Japanese. You're going to have somebody on the phone to speak Japanese so that they can return or they can get some support questions answered. So it's like thinking through all of that, right?
Yeah, it's not easy. It's funny that you mentioned Japan. I guess it's not funny because we're doing a lot of commerce there, but I have a friend who's in Japan and who asked me for my jewelry. That's a great example. How would you know that? But she did. And I had sent her some samples, and, the communication just to make sure if she got and received those items, and, then was she able to, like, when she was going to show it at a fashion event, what was she going to say about me? How was it going to be represented? There's just a lot, and if somebody wanted to order that, what would they be willing to pay? And would that amount make sense based on what it would take for me to send it there? So just those basic things without thinking of translation or, and then there's the sensitivity to culture. Are there certain designs that wouldn't be acceptable or represent me in the way that I want to be represented there? So, and then there's in every country is different, and people are socialized in a different way. And so there's some products, I think, that you need to be aware of, depending on what you care about. But, certainly some people don't care, but I do very much.
So you want to sell jewelry there, right? Successfully. So.
Yeah, but I wanted to come across as that representation of me because it's from my heart. So whereas other people might be making something that's quite functional, a pair of scissors, well, you're not going to worry about what they think of your scissors or you. They just want them to work, right? So that's it. There's so much to think about. So it can be discouraging. How do you recommend people to just go with it? Like, it's 80 pages. How is it all here?
It's a lot here. So the book is not for small businesses. It's not for first timers. It really is for companies that are setting shop in several, dozens or couple hundred countries. That really seek to grow beyond the national borders. And it can be any company. This applies to any company. This could apply to a company, based in Italy, trying to go across Europe and then try the States, try China.
And I think in that case that this would be great because what it communicates is really you need a coordinator. You need somebody who handles this process for you. And this is what they're going to lead a team of people, and that team of people is going to put everything into place. And so that's really what this is a guide, what it's about. But looking at that broader subject of accepting and moving forward into this thought process that makes it a global economy where where every aspect of business can transfer over internationally. What are your thoughts about how that's changed who we are here in the United States, or just how as people? How is that that we have to be open to making it work?
It's quite interesting. Again, I've led teams of globalizers for many, many years. There is something about Americans trying to drive globalization that is very different than Europeans trying to drive globalization. Or I think one of the things I always explain to my teams, part of why it becomes sort of natural to me. I was born at a border of two countries. Mm-hmm. And so just by that, I was always listening to French and Spanish and Catalan. The area where I was born were trilingual. Mm-hmm. And so I just grew up knowing that there were more cultures other than mine, that they were different thinking. We could watch the French TV, we could watch the local Catalan TV, we could watch the Spanish TV. And then in school you had to pick all these languages, and we traveled there. And so there's a lot of empathy that comes with that. There's a lot of relationship building and a lot of courage that comes with that, because you need to be able to understand not just your own people. Now, when we look at the States, and I have children that are American, and I see the sort of languages they study, it's not the same. The States is a huge country. We have enough issues inside our own country.
Right.
And it's not a very globally aware country, I would say. And I think that's why they need people like me to keep reminding companies that our products need or could be making a lot of money elsewhere as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so they get that, but then you need to take it farther and say, but do you realize that in Russia, they're not going to understand anything we're saying in English? And so you start with that. There's a lot of executives that get this and support this, but there's a huge number of very high up there leaders that have not stopped to think about this. So they have superior products, they have incredible teams, yet they don't know how to go global.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so in that case, that's where people like me in many companies, then they step in and they help, and they put these international readiness programs. Mm-hmm. If you think of Facebook, if you think of Twitter, if you think of Netflix, they have an Anna. So all these companies have one of me. And I know that because we're a very tight circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's our profession. We meet very often.
Mm-hmm.
And so all these companies, Apple, IBM, Microsoft, they have globalization teams that are thinking very similarly issues than what I think. How do we go global? How do we stay in those countries? What does it take for the product?
And, I'm sure you realize that team of people in the background really are shaping what our global economy is growing into, really. And it's so important to think about that, because we take that for granted in just joking around about selling jewelry in another country or whatever. But, that would not be possible if it weren't for you in these big companies setting this, because there has got to be so much just the legal aspects of, and then the perceptions of, I've been so, trained to go, made in USA and keep the money here and keep the dollar strong and whatever. And so, it's hard to change that way of thinking to why does it make sense? Of course, there's money to be made, but then we're also
we want the US dollar to be very strong. The more we can export, the better we do this, the more money is going to come in.
Yeah.
So when I hear certain politicians talking about globalization, it really scares me, because if you do this correctly, the US company or whatever the company is ends up making the money, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so if you can penetrate other countries with your products, not only can you make a lot of money, but you can actually help a lot of lives, right? There's a lot of medical products. There is a lot of innovation that comes out of the United States that actually is needed in many, many areas of the world. And so I don't look at it as just purely, making money, but For example, where I work, we have the data systems, the backup systems, the storage systems for a lot of data that is being used in very important parts of the world to make things happen faster for doctors, as an example, to make things happen faster for telecommunications. And so, yes, there is the revenue aspect, but there's also the innovation and helping the humanity aspect of this. And I think that if companies are very clever on how they plan and focus, there is a lot of revenue to be made. And so you don't want to leave this money at the table for somebody else.
Right. You know, I just find it so fascinating, and you're so easy to understand for me. I love it. Like, I don't know if I can relate to you on very many levels. Tell me a little bit more about yourself personally. You said you have children and you live in California. Yep. You know, what are the things that you like to do when you're not, making the world international commerce?
I am the chair of Women in Technology for my company. So, and I also co-founded two nonprofits. So one is called Imagine Educating Everyone. It's a Kenyan nonprofit where we help kids in Kenya and different villages in Kenya. And then I do have another nonprofit that I co-founded with two very dear friends of mine. It's called Women in Localization. It's a very strong association of about 3,000 women around the world that
what is it?
Women in Localization. Women in Localization. And people can, the website is Women in Localization. So if anybody's interested in our profession, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they can go and check it out. Yeah.
And I want to go back to you more on a personal level, but now that you mentioned it, you have to have a chapter. What is localization? So yeah. What is that compared to globalization?
I'm going to make it easy. So let's say you have an iPhone or an Android. You have a cell phone that has been made by Apple. Let's pretend you have an iPhone. What you see in this iPhone is things in English, right?
Right.
You see date, menu. You see all your apps are in English. You see you can set up an alarm clock. All these things are in English. Localization means you're going to adapt a product into another culture. So when Apple wants to sell this iPhone into Korea, they need to extract these strings. So they need to extract this content that says menu and alarm and iPhone. They translate the content into different languages and they replace that content in Korean.
And it's not just straight translation. It's got to be cultural too, you know. So, because if we say pick, right?
That's right. That is the process of localization.
Okay.
That is the process of you make a product locally okay somewhere else. And so Apple does this in many, many, many languages. So then you would say Apple localizes into many languages, like 20, 30 languages. I don't know how many they do, but that's what localization is.
Okay. Well, that I know that a lot of social media companies, because I've, like to spend a lot of time on social media. So let's say Snapchat or different, things like that. They'll send people to different countries to live for a while to get the climate of what it's like to be there so that they can adapt. So, I've heard about that, but how does a big company, how does Apple do that? I mean, because it's got to be fast. They grew so fast in these countries with these products.
I mean, Apple does it, Netflix does it. We all do it very fast. Yeah. We do things overnight sometimes. If I know, for example, people that work at Skype, or the way they do it is the way I describe on the book. So they have very focused teams that know exactly what products need to launch in what countries. And so they work with engineering, they work with the legal teams, they work with the support teams, they work with the marketing teams, the global trade compliance office, and they do this localization process. They do all the translations, they prepare the code. The other thing that Apple needs to do is, or an Apple-like setup, is they train the people in their support centers, right? The call centers. They need to understand that there is a new product coming out. They need to understand the product. They need to understand everything about that product. So they need to be trained in their language as well. So it's a big, huge machinery. That's why I call it an orchestra.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and everybody.
A lot of parts. For one thing, like an iPhone, to launch globally, there's hundreds of people behind that, right? A lot of testing, a lot of QA, a lot of translations, a lot of training, a lot of adaptation. You're right, because imagine launching something in Hebrew in Israel. They write from right to left. So you need to think about all this stuff, right?
Going back to Imagine Educating Everyone, which is in Kenya, right? Tell me about that more.
So remember I told you that I grew up in a border area of the world. So the area I grew up in, it's called Catalonia. And every summer you can see all the African immigrants that work in Germany, work in France, work in Italy, go home. On August 1st, you see all the cars driving from Germany down to France, through my country, all the way to Africa, to go and rest for a month.
Right.
And I grew up seeing this, and I grew up seeing so much immigration back and forth. And I met a lot of people, and I met a lot of desperate people trying to get into Europe for a better life. And I remember always thinking, I wish I could send them my food, or I wish I could, help them, whatever it is that they are, because it's a very difficult thing to leave your country. And so I always, saw movies about Kenya, and I would look at photos of, Mombasa and Nairobi and the Maasai and Kilimanjaro and all these beautiful photos of safaris. And I started talking like this to a friend of mine at NetApp, actually. And we said, well, let's investigate how we could start a nonprofit to help kids in Kenya. And we ended up partnering with Free the Children. Free the Children is a huge Canadian organization that after much research, we loved and we partnered with. And in a couple of years, we ended up raising so much money through our personal connections that we today are sustaining 5 different villages of a border of Kenya and Tanzania. And I've been there a few times, and it's very humbling. It's beautiful, and it's a place where I would, go and live for a while if I could.
I have a friend, Ruth Curran, who will be on my show in a few weeks. Do you know her? She just, you never know. Sometimes I mention people and they're like, I know her. It's a small world sometimes on the internet, but she just came back from Tanzania. She's going to be coming on the show to tell me about her experience there. And so I'm looking forward to hearing about that from her. And then I've dealt with different people over the years with humanitarian efforts for bringing water to villages and, things like that. And so that's really cool.
Yeah, what we do when we're there, it's you can't just go and do one thing because they need so much. So you need to think of the whole ecosystem. So the societies are very matriarchal there, and so these mamas, the strong women in the village, they're called mamas. They get up every day, every morning. They walk for 1 or 2 miles to go and find water. That's what they do. They go back into their shacks because they live in these shacks, In the meantime, the kids need to stay home watching over the cattle or watching over the animals or watching over the smaller kids. So what we did is build several schools that are closer to the some of these areas. And obviously at the school, you build the well there, so that the kid can go to school and then bring home the water. Because the mamas don't let the kids go to school because they need the water. So what we do is we put the water at the school, everybody goes to school and comes back with water.
And
then the other thing that we did is we've put a lot of sanitation programs so that the kids learn how to wash their hands, use actual bathrooms. It's a full program. It's amazing. The impact is really, really well run.
No, I lost your audio. We're breaking up a little bit. So if we do lose the connection, we'll just try again like we did before. But so I can imagine. And I've seen programs like that start from just a very simple idea, going and connecting with somebody there, and then it grows and grows and grows. What has that been like for you? Whoa.
They're going to Kenya?
Yeah, seeing the growth from the journey from starting out with an idea to a point where now you can tell me all of these things that you've done and how big it's grown. That in itself could be somebody's life work, and that for you has been just another thing you've done.
Yes, I don't know what it is, but I have ideas and I just go and do them. I guess
it's part of who you are.
It's part of who I am. I don't know. I was studying DNA for a test with my kids on high school, and I was saying, "What do you think is in your DNA?" And I think. Maybe that's part of how I grew up, with my grandparents telling me all about Africa and helping other people, and having lived in Africa, having lived in across Europe and here in the States. Ultimately, what you see is people are the same everywhere. Everybody wants to feel safe. Everybody wants to feel loved. Everybody wants to have a job, be recognized. We're not that different, and so having a lot of empathy works really well, and that way you can form these relationships, trying to listen, trying to slow down. Then you can do a lot of stuff, if both people can meet at some place, you can build crazy stuff, and a lot of
and fun. Your face lights up thinking about it. I love that. I love it when I see that light go on. If you talked a lot about growing up in Catalonia, and I actually said, I knew about the thing about August where everybody goes on holiday to the south of France, because I went to Paris in August when I was in my 20s and everything was closed because everybody's on holiday. And so that was such a big culture shock for me, coming from Los Angeles, growing up here where everything's always open practically 24/7, throughout the year, to think that people would just shut down their businesses and leave town for a month and rest, as you said. And you saw this happening. I have friends who live in, Malibu and Santa Monica, and they talk about their seasons as tourist seasons. When tourist season is over, then that's when they enjoy their locale, because they get that of all the people flooding in at that during the summer and during certain times. So, like, what did you see? What made that impression on you when you were a young person that you still have with you now? Like, you could turn it the other way. What would your younger self tell you now about why you're doing what you're doing?
I think, when you think of how your parents raised you and the values that your parents give you, back then I hated a lot of the rules that were at my parents' house, It was tough, but it really gave me the framework and the endurance and the material of who I am today, I think. That's all I can hope that I can pass my kids.
Mm-hmm.
It is tough out there. I do have many, many days that I'm like, oh my God, this is all too much,
Mm.
It is, being a senior director of engineering is very complicated. But again, you need to be able to get up the next day and wake up with some sort of spirit and keep on going.
Right. What is that for you?
I don't know. I get up every day. I'm like the Energizer bunny again.
Great. That's great. Well,
I end up very exhausted every night.
When you're talking, like, I used to work in banking, so I knew, about, big mistakes are costly mistakes, or not meeting expectations. It was a lot of forecasting based on a past experience, but then you're amplifying that and you're trying to reach it. It's so big business is just like so much sometimes about the money and about the grind and stepping over people. And it just, to me, it was, just heartbreaking. Like, you can't be sensitive in business, yet you are so warm and kind-hearted. It just emanates from you that, it's hard for me to even picture you in that corporate setting being in charge of all of this, but that's what it takes, is a big heart, I think, to have something like this work. So, what's some advice that you might give to someone who wants to get in, but maybe is a little intimidated, or maybe doesn't think that they belong in that setting?
I have to tell you, when I was 23, that's when I started working at Cisco. Mm-hmm. I used to have panic attacks. I didn't think I would belong in that corporate setting. Mm. It was very difficult for me, especially coming from Europe and trying to understand the American corporate business world. It was tough. And so what I would tell myself of back then is just be patient, just listen and learn. Observe, I still observe a lot of, senior VPs, executive vice presidents. I have a lot to learn. So observing others, don't feel intimidated. You need to try it. You need to try it. I do talk to a lot of people, and I have people in my own team that have all the freedom of the world to fail, and they don't want to fail. It's all the core of who you are that sometimes stops you. People stop themselves all the time into greatness or trying different things because it's not good, it's not finalized, it's not well thought enough. And I think what I've learned to do is to start, even if it's not the right product yet or the right solution. I get going. I start. I pull the cart. I might not have all the answers. I might not know where I am going, but I smell, some sort of direction. And I listen a lot. I learn a lot from other people. I talk to other people. We were talking about Apple. I talk to people at Apple. Like,
I like that quote, what you just said. So, pull the cart. That's awesome. Be inspiring, somebody's put. Love your attitude. It's so true.
Yeah, you have to, because in my case, there's not a lot of role models. We are it. We are the ones making it happen. It's a pretty relatively new profession. There were no people before us.
Right.
And so we are kind of showing, how it's done. And that's why the book is something that I hope will help some students or some new people that want to get into this profession. It's doable, but you need to start. I had a boss once that told me, think big, start small. Really big, but you start very small. And that way you don't give yourself some anxiety.
Right.
It's okay. You need to pace yourself. It's kind of a marathon, right? Like if you want to keep a job for 20, 30 years, it's a marathon.
How do you feel about women in your business? And you started this organization, Women in Localization. Why is that important to you? Because is there few women in your field that, or is it because women love to get together and collaborate more than people realize?
I think it's both. Actually, you just nailed it. So we are 3 co-founders of Women in Localization. Mm-hmm. We used to work together at a company. I actually hired these 2 women, and we became really good friends. And one day we're like, why don't we start an organization? This is before Women in Technology, so we were thinking ahead already. We couldn't see a lot of women. We work in engineering, so we could not see a lot of women in high tech. You can't see a lot of women in localization. There's plenty of women in the field of translations and reviewers and editors and marketing. There's a lot of women in that space. Where we could not see a lot of women were doing localization in high tech. And so we thought, well, why not us? And so we started it. It started very small. It started as the Northern California Association. Mm-hmm. And then it very quickly expanded across the states. And then we started going global, where we have chapters in China and Japan and Ireland and Catalonia. Obviously, I had to open one there. Yes. In Germany, we're about to open one in Korea, and we have a long list. And the interesting part of this is the point B that you just made is women are dying to talk to other professional women. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they want to talk not just about their job. They want to talk about how do they make dinner every night while having a crazy job.
Right. Their experience. Overall, what it's like to be me. And are you experiencing that too? So that's good. That's amazing. You really are inspiring me. So Anna, what would you say is your core value for yourself and for your work, and that you really always come back to? What is it that makes your heart so big and so motivating?
I think patience, and empathy. I think patience and empathy. Trying to listen to where's the other person coming from, because otherwise we're not going to talk, and we're not going to understand each other. Or it's not that I get along with everybody. There's sometimes people that are like, but for the most part, Yeah, I'm not perfect by any means of, stretch of the imagination, but I think trying to say, okay, calm down. What is this other person trying to say? Usually it works pretty well.
That's great empathy. I think you're the first person who's used that when I asked that question for themselves, and I think that's really says a lot about you, because you're thinking of others all the time, and your work, and why you wrote this book, and in the organizations that you've started, and all of your passion for the people in Africa and every country that you touch. I think that really, I'm so proud of myself for inviting you on this show, because, I think it's important for us to open ourselves up to meeting people who are different than we are, doing different things, but because it's also relatable. And we're all human. We're all experiencing so much of the same things. When you mentioned your son helping, with I think it was your child, you were helping with high school homework and learning about DNA, and I think that's so fascinating, because that's what we all do. My kids are growing up. My youngest is in high school, so those conversations. Yeah, I could definitely relate to that.
How old is your son?
I have 3 sons. My youngest is going to be 17 in a few weeks. And I have one who's turning 20 in January. And then I have a 21-year-old, and he's in his senior year of college at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Wow.
Not far from home. And
congratulations.
He actually went to Nepal, Kilimanjaro this summer. So, he is really thinking globally in terms of his job, because he wants to be a constructional engineer. He's in architectural engineering in school. And so just looking at how he can help help building in areas that have earthquakes so that they can be more sustainable. And I just love that he has that idea of something that he can do to change the world and make it a better place. So, I'm very proud of that. I'm trying to do that just by talking, and because that's what I do best, and I love it. I love having this open dialogue, and we're friends for life now. So I want you to make sure that you let me know if you're going to be anywhere where we can check in with you and see what's going on, and tell us about your enterprising experiences. I'm just looking at your book, and it just makes me smile. Thank you so much for being here, Anna.
Well,
do you have any questions for me?
I do. How many your guests? Yeah. What do your viewers? What do they want? What are they looking for?
God, I wish I knew.
What are the most popular topics?
That's, what, for me, I've been doing this for 3 years now, and I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I think that what I look for is just some kind of common thread of goodness and caring about other people. So yeah, I've talked to business people, and I've talked to young people who are just starting out, and a lot of people who have published their book or done something as far as achieved their goal. So, time for a poll. I see in the comments. So yeah, friend, do a poll for me. That's a good question. What do you like about Tinsel Town? But it's the idea behind Tinsel Town is to highlight people who I think are the true superstars in our midst that may not get that limelight, that Hollywood feeling, because to me, that's what's truly important, and that's what I want to see. And it was hard at first to get that message across, because people thought, you should be interviewing celebrities. Well, I'd be happy to interview a celebrity, and I have. But the reason I've interviewed them is because they are setting this example of hope and helping others or whatever, and not just because they're a celebrity. I think that really spreads to everybody who is making kindness count, making having a mission. I noticed that you talk about elevator speech and just knowing what your purpose is. That's what my passion, or what my motivation is, to have had a website and do blogging and writing. I wrote my own book about transformation, and in all of that learning process, what I connected with most is that we're all searching for something that we love doing, that helps others, but that makes us feel accomplished, that purpose. So I guess to answer your question, I don't really care what other people want. I put out there what I want, because my goal is really just to spread this light of communication on, what's good about people and what I find. And so far, I get more and more people following me every day, and I connect more and more people. And so there's something that triggers, like I get these PR pitches. Okay. So like I get an email from your PR person saying, would you like to review Anna's book? We could send you a copy for review. And if you'd like to interview her, she's available. So I always kind of just look at the subject and I think, oh, that's something I've heard a buzz about, or that's something that I'd like to learn about. And so then I'll read the bio, and there's just these, I don't know, it just comes through where I want to know you. I want to know you. So then I think, oh, I'll get her on my show, and then now, I'll know her, because that's something we could do these days.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
With other people, right? Like you're a people person. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that makes me really happy. So, I have, I go through periods where I don't really feel like doing it. Maybe I'm into my own thing and I kind of stray away, but I always come back to it because I enjoy it so much. And I used to have a very scheduled format, and I would do a lot of research and make questions and and I would try to remember to ask these questions and stay on a time schedule and everything. But now I've gotten to the point where I just like to have the conversation and see where it goes, so it's just a pleasure. You're very good at answering questions and staying to the point. So I'll try to do that too. But thank you. Do you have any other questions for me?
Who's going to be your next guest?
Oh, that's a very good question. So tomorrow I have two guests, and one is a returning guest and one's a new guest. I'm looking around for the book because I have a pile of books here where to go. But Blooming into Mindfulness is a book that was written by Martha Brettschneider. And she was on my show in March, and we talked about her book, and it was really, I'm going to grab it and see if this is it. Yes. This is Martha's book, Blooming into Mindfulness. So she talks about how being a master gardener and taking photographs of her flowers. And she learned how to do this micro photography where it's just like it's really incredible. Those things helped her get through a really difficult time in her life. Okay. And so she had a transformation, and she wrote this book, and I connected with her on many levels. And so then I met Bren Haas, who's actually watching right now, and she is a gardener, and she has a website and has like a huge following. She also takes pictures of these beautiful blooms and flowers. And so, so gardening is something that I've always related to as far as a metaphor for life, growth. And that's where my focus is going to be for next year. Every year I choose a focus. This year it was about connecting and creating and sparkling. I wanted to be very in the light, shining, and putting myself out there, and it was very good. So next year it's going to be about growth and development and blooming. And so these two are going to come on my show tomorrow. We're going to talk about what they're doing and how they inspired me to have a year in bloom, which will be my focus for next year. A year in bloom. So I actually I got challenged to write another book. I didn't really write a book, but this is a calendar that I am putting out this week. And it's called A Year in Bloom. It's just a little calendar that has a place to enter in your focus words for the day and reflections. And it has every day of the year. And it has my own pictures of flowers that I've taken. So it has a lot of photographs, so just like to encourage people to follow their little dreams and make them into something that is lasting. And I find that very fulfilling. So we're going to be talking about that tomorrow. But next week, I have a couple of really interesting authors on serious subjects. Like there's one, she has a book called Body Punishment. And she talks about, I'm very concerned about people who, have mental, inconsistencies where they get very depressed or they, hurt themselves or hurt other people. And so this is, depression and anxiety is a common problem for so many people. And they're, so when I connect with people about that, I like to talk about that. So she's going to come on and talk about her findings. And I have somebody else coming on about grief. So, these are very deep subjects. People, don't think Tinsel Town, why are we talking about cutting and grief, and all these hard things? And that it's because, these people have found a way to express themselves, share what they know in order to help other people and make the world a better place. And so why wouldn't I want to talk to them? That's where we're going next, from truly global to My New Friend Grief is the name of that book. It's, all about life.
Exactly. It takes all of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think people are great. And, we talk about so much negativity and so much worrisome, crazy things that we hear people say. So just want to counterbalance that with some positivity. And so far, if I just keep talking, then I don't hear all that negative stuff.
That's right. You got to keep it going. And it's, again, it's the marathon. So you need to stay focused and surround yourself also with positive people.
Exactly. Exactly. And another thing I should share with you that I wanted to bring your message to light is because in the morning, there are a lot of shows like this that they talk about marketing, and I connected with people through the social media and through the live streaming networks who use the platform to build their business. And so most of the people who you might have seen some, I'll make sure that you get the information or the connections with these people who I felt like they would really enjoy seeing this. And because they're on East Coast time and they're typically watching in the morning, they may see the replay. Not too many people here at this time on our California time. I don't know why. I think California time is the best time, but they're just, so there's a lot of people who I know who I think are going to be very interested in your book. So I did want to bring that to light. But then for me personally, that's why I'm disappointed I don't have questions from them, because they might be more specific to the technical side of it. But for me, I'm just so happy to meet someone like you who does all these wonderful things, runs this huge corporation of engineering and international, of all the things we talked about, and has time to write a book. So much more. That's a lot of work. So I commend you for that. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And if you're ever in Hollywood, let me know. We'll go out for a cocktail. Cheers. Okay. Well, it's exactly an hour at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everybody, for coming to Tinsel Town Live with Miz Meliz, and for meeting my new friend, Anna Schlegel, the author of Truly Global. So get your copy today. We'll put the links in the side on Facebook so you can link up with Anna. And what is your Twitter at Anna Papalona?
Papayona.
Papayona. I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go offline. Goodbye, everybody, on Facebook.
Bye.
And thank you.